Good morning. Scott Cahill here. This morning I'm going to talk about the infrastructure of the United States, the whole of the infrastructure of the United States, issues that we have as a nation. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to speak a bit about Oroville Dam because it exemplifies some of the issues that we have universally with the infrastructure of our nation. But other than that, this is going to be about the whole of the infrastructure of the nation. So if that doesn't interest you, I certainly understand. But I think it's an important point for those of us who are involved in the construction and the engineering community and regulators, legislators. We need to understand this universally because much has to be done in a short amount of time. Oroville Dam, I think, exemplifies the situation with dams in the United States. Everyone has a different count of how many dams there are in the United States, and depending on how you count them up, there are different numbers. 83,000, 86,000, 91,000 are some of the numbers that are thrown around. I believe there are around 90,000 dams. I did an inventory, it was some time ago, some years ago. To come up with that number. The definition of what is a dam and what is not differs from state to state often. So it's legitimate that we don't have an exact number. I think that the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, came up with a number that was 86,300 and some. But a lot of dams, a lot of issues with those dams. We also have the next thing is the power grid. Our power grid is sufficient for the load that we now have, just barely, but sufficient. And those two things, dams and the power grid, are the greatest exposure to public safety. Those two have the possibility of doing the most damage from a public safety standpoint to our nation. So they're important to think about and to address. Dams, of course, any of you who followed my videos and my writing knows that I care very deeply about dam safety. Some of our dams will kill hundreds of thousands of people if they fail. That would be absolutely unacceptable to all of us. Therefore, we have to bring them up to a level of maintenance where we don't have to worry about that. There's always the chance of a catastrophe when you're storing energy, but it shouldn't be like what we've witnessed with Oroville and other dams, many other dams, which are in terrible shape and have not been properly maintained. The first thing as a nation that we must do is decide who we are. And indeed, our infrastructure is who we are. When we look at a place and we call it a third world country, what are we talking about? And the answer is we're talking about its infrastructure. We're talking about the roads, the power, the whole of it. Bridges, highways, internet, gas and petroleum conveyances, levees, canal systems, power generation. And it's the same with us. Where we should be and where we have been is at the very forefront with the finest infrastructure. And that has allowed the United States to grow at the magnificent rates that we've grown. And that also is the reason that we're growing at the disgusting rates that we're currently growing. For the greatest nation in the world to be growing at 1.9%, or more realistically 0.9%, is disgusting and unacceptable. And I think that as Americans, we all agree on that, don't we? That's not what we want. That's not who we wish to be. What we want to be is a nation who has an infrastructure that is in such good shape that we're bounding forward in learning, in developing, in industry, in education. Every single year, we're better than the year before. But right now, we're dragging an anchor everywhere we go. And that anchor is our aged infrastructure. Dams 100 years old to 50 years old. A power grid that was never meant to drive the energy needs of today. Many things. Internet is universal in many countries, but not yet in the United States. We need to fix that. Cell service is throughout many countries, not in the United States. Now, the United States is a sprawling, massive country, but still in all, we're the United States. I shouldn't drive around the corner and not be able to make a phone call, not be able to communicate. These are the things that bring industry and that maintain industry. When you have trucks on the road and the roads are socked in and you can't get from place to place, then your business fails. Your business is hurt. And it may bring a business down simply because you can't transport things. There was a time when we could transport things across our great nation by canals and waterways. They're all silted in. We've got a long way to go. A long way to go to be to an acceptable situation. And it's going to take all of us to get there. Dams, of course, let's talk about them first. Greatest liability, greatest asset, I think. Dams are magnificent structures. If you care about water quality, as I do, deeply, then you should be an advocate of dams, because dams are the singular best thing we can do to improve clarity and quality of a watershed. Dams with appropriate low water column discharge and fish ladders are magnificent structures that produce so much good that the slight bad that they may produce ecologically is far offset by 100-fold by the good that they do ecologically. They produce habitat. They produce clarity of water. They produce oxygenation of water. They produce environment for fish and wildlife and birds. Dams are good things. And they also produce recreational possibilities for people and things. Quite frankly, it's a replacement for the beaver that were killed off because they made such pretty hats and coats and whatever. At one time, our waterways were a cascading series of pools, and the clarity was magnificent, and there was much, much, much habitat. And those who believe that a stream restoration, which leaves a stream with clean, straight banks, a conductance from water to point A to point B, are completely wrong. That is not a healthy stream. A healthy stream has a number of pools along its course. And a healthy stream, unfortunately, the banks flood. That is a part of it. That's a part of it. So we don't want flooding, but dams take care of a number of those issues and restore habitat. They're good things for habitat. And I always am interested in engaging in a conversation like that because I love dams and I love wildlife and I love water quality. And they can live hand in hand. The more dams, the better. The more dams, the cleaner hydropower we produce. By far our cleanest methodology for developing power, by far. And on top of it, all the other positive things that I talked about. The power grid needs to be stepped up significantly, and the opportunity to generate needs to be opened up so that private people can develop generation wind, solar, gas, um, all of them, coal, nuclear, all those things need to be considered. One of the issues that we have now is a very burdensome methodology to permit um, all of the various power generation. That should not be so. A person should not have to spend a huge amount of money in order to see if they can do a project. That's not fair. It's not equitable. And it is not conducive to getting the maximum power available that we need as a nation. So we need to fix that. That's important. Bridges, some 600,000 bridges, 200,000 of which are not up to minimum standards. Bridges are improving. They need to improve much more. Bridges were given a C plus by the ASCE, an organization which I respect greatly. Dams were given a D, and I think, quite frankly, that the ASCE is being very kind to dams. Energy was given a D plus. Inland waterways were given a D. The inland waterways, there's no way anyone who spent any time on the inland waterways and canals could possibly give them as high a grade as a D. They're almost impassable. Even our intercoastal waterways have silted in. There's insufficient money for dredging and for maintenance of these things. And these are by far the least expensive and least impactful way of moving bulk goods across the United States. A full 1/3 cheaper than moving them by train. Imagine that. That's a great advantage. And for non-time critical, bulk, heavy freight, these inland waterways and canals are a magnificent asset, not to mention the recreational consideration for them. We've got to bring these things back. We've got to have this. This is a wonderful thing that we've ignored because it seemed unimportant, I guess, at some point. But it's very important. It's important to not only our well-being financially as a nation, but our well-being universally. A canal through a little city is a magnificent thing for recreation, boating, fishing, hanging out by. Restaurants go up along these canals and parks, and you can take your boat up and down the thing, whether it's a little boat with an outboard on it or a massive yacht. You can go from place to place. That generates wealth and recreation for everyone, from the poor to the rich. Everyone can use our intercoastal waterways and canal systems if only we would maintain them. Gas and petroleum pipelines, including liquefied natural gas, and the various associated compression stations and injection stations that go along with that system are necessary. They're all across the United States already, both petrochemical and, liquefied petrochemical, both product and raw crude pipelines, and also gas pipelines. They crisscross the United States. You don't ever hear about them. Many people don't even know that they're near them, but they probably are near you. And the reason you don't know is because they move an incredible amount of product all around our great nation with no impact. There are catastrophes, and some of those are horrible, and we need to do better than what we're doing. But just imagine how many bad things would happen if we hauled all that product by truck. Thank goodness for pipelines, huh? So that's kind of a little bit of an oversight. There are other things too. The internet I believe in, and I got a chance to talk to Congressman Bill Johnson. This is something he cares deeply about. I paraphrasing Bill here, but what he said to me when we got to spend a morning together talking about infrastructure was that the availability of the internet allows knowledge for all of us. So if you are a child growing up in a slum, or you are a wealthy man's child sitting on the aft deck of a yacht, if you have internet, there is no knowledge that is unavailable to you. It's incredible. The nights that I spent at the library as a child, and as a young man, and as a middle-aged man, as I learned the things that I've learned in order to be able to do my job, how easy it is now to just sit with a laptop and be able to pull up all this magnificent information. What an incredible asset it is, and it is absolutely vitally unfair to not have it available to all. And that's what Mr. Johnson believes, Congressman Johnson. And he is absolutely right. This is a universal right, if you will, to knowledge. It's so much more important than playing video games and things. And it's not even that everyone wishes for that. It's the availability of it that is so important. The fact that a child anywhere who's interested in physics, as a young kid, that I was so interested in magnetism and gravity and the transmission of light through space. And these are the things that I spent hours and hours with experimentation in my basement on and thought about. And if only I had had this kind of information available to me. And now every kid can have a level playing field, so that if we can have internet universally available, high-speed internet across the United States, that will change everything. It will allow any man to be able to rise to his full potential. And after all, isn't that the promise that makes the United States of America the United States of America? Great country, and it's still a great country. But we've got some issues with infrastructure. Let us work together and address those. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.